What did you do sexually with your first partner that you only realized wasn't normal when you got into a new relationship? Story 1. My first girlfriend showed me how to pleasure her with my fingers. She had me start with 1 and then work up to 2, building the intensity. She kept urging me to go faster and harder until I was practically pounding her with my fist. Unsurprisingly, my subsequent girlfriend was quite upset when I failed to realize that she didn't enjoy being C-punched. Story 2. After 2 years of waiting until marriage, we decided it was time for me to give him a hand job while we were making out in the car. Not knowing what I do now, I awkwardly rotated my hand around as if I were using a joystick. He didn't correct me, and he finished in less than a minute. Sadly, he never corrected me in the next 2 years we were together. It wasn't until I met my next boyfriend that I found out what a hand job was actually supposed to be. He laughed at me when I told him the story. Story 3. The first time I had sex, it was incredibly painful. His penis was huge, like the circumference of a soda can and probably 10 inches. I didn't know this wasn't normal and thought the problem was with me. When I went to the doctor, she did an exam and said it could either be psychological or just take time for my vagina to adjust to sex. She didn't consider the size of his manhood. I was too scared to have sex for a long time afterwards, but when I eventually dated someone with an average-sized penis, I realized I was fine and the problem wasn't with me. Story 4. My first girlfriend had a thing for rough sex. She would get aroused by the thought of someone seeing hickeys and bite marks on her body, and she would even ask to be slapped and spanked hard. At first I was taken aback, but being inexperienced, I decided to just go with it. I was scared of being arrested for abuse, but she was so passionate while giving head that I was incentivized to stay. Story 5. When I was 19 and inexperienced in the realm of sex, I was thrust into a situation with my now fiancée, 5 years my senior. On our first sexual encounter, she wanted me to have anal sex with her and told me that she didn't need lube because she was already so wet. I was shocked, but I complied, unaware that this wasn't a normal thing. Fast forward 5 years and we are now engaged and planning our wedding for next year. I recently posted about this experience and was amazed to see that it was my highest rated post. It made me realize how abnormal this experience was, but the passion and pleasure she brought to the table kept me from backing down. Story 6. When I was younger, I had a boyfriend who took advantage of my anxiety and would always use it as an excuse to have sex. Every time I had a panic attack, he would try to comfort me for a couple of seconds before he would jump on top of me. This really scarred me and had a negative impact on me for a long time. I'm honestly humbled by the amount of comments I've gotten about this. It's surprising to see how many people have experienced the same thing. I'm really grateful for my current partner, who has helped me to regain my trust and has made me feel better. Story 7. After meeting the first guy I had sex with, we ended up dating for 7 years. During that time, I developed my own sexual habits around his preferences. One of his favorite moves was when I would wrap my hand around his entire scrotum and squeeze as hard as I could. He seemed to really enjoy it, so I thought it was something all guys liked. However, when I tried to show my current partner this move, he quickly informed me that it was not something all guys enjoyed. Story 8. The girl I lost my virginity to was very passionate about her own virginity and waiting for the right guy. Little did I know that as soon as we did it, she would become unfaithful. I was naive and young, so I stayed in a toxic relationship for far too long. This damaged my trust in relationships for years and left me with a lot of baggage. It's been 10 years since then, and I'm now in a wonderful and healthy relationship with an unbelievable woman. Story 9. After being with my first girlfriend, I discovered that she would often say I'd had enough, to signal that she was no longer enjoying the sexual experience. In reality, she was just trying to get it over with, as she wasn't really interested in sex. My next partner, however, was quite different. They never seemed to want it to end. Years later, when I caught up with my former girlfriend, she finally opened up to me about her true feelings. She confessed that she had been pretending to enjoy sex in hopes that one day it would make her feel something. But the one thing she did enjoy was when I went down on her, as it allowed her to look away and imagine that I was a woman. Story 10. My first long-term girlfriend was a wild and passionate woman. We started dating in high school, and for the next 6 years, she was my partner in crime. We had a lot of free time after school, and being latchkey kids, we made the most of it. She had an insatiable appetite for sex and liked to try out things you'd expect to see in a porno. After we broke up, it was a bit of a shock to go back to having normal sex with other girls. Story 11. I was quite inexperienced when it came to sex, so when I met the girl who would be my first partner, I was surprised to learn that she was 2 years older and far more experienced than me. She had a unique approach to sex that involved switching between her vagina and anus frequently, and she particularly liked it when I inserted into her backside as I was about to climax. I later discovered that not all women are as open to this idea, and some can react quite dramatically, such as screaming and hitting me in the face, an experience that doesn't exactly bring an ejaculation to a halt. Story 12. My first partner and I had an incompatible sex life, with us rarely having sex, usually just once a month if we were lucky. Despite all the surveys I read claiming that couples had sex more often than that, I kept believing it would get better if I kept showing her how much I loved her. I was wrong. Now, with my new wife, sex is a regular occurrence. We have it 3 to 4 times a week, and she's sexual, willing to try whatever I suggest, except rape play. I want to make it clear that my first wife was a great person and I truly loved her, but we were just incompatible. We are both much happier now and still maintain a good friendship while co-parenting our 2 daughters. Story 13. My 4-year relationship with my first long-term boyfriend was anything but ideal. He had a nasty habit of degrading me with foul language during sex, even when I asked him not to. One day I shared my fantasy with him for him to make love to me without calling me names, choking, or slapping. Unfortunately, he couldn't even last 5 minutes before he was slapping me and calling me a slut. Each time he treated me this way, I felt so used and unloved. I wanted us to have a loving, respectful connection, but it felt like every time we had sex, it was a little painful. Story 14. The first girl I dated always swallowed my cum. I assumed that this was an only option, but when I was with my next partner and she went down on me, I warned her I was about to come and she suddenly asked, "Where do you want to come?" I was taken aback, wondering what other choices I had. I thought that all that was left was up to the other person, but I was wrong. Story 15. My first partner was incredibly inflexible and immobile in the bedroom, despite being an active and petite person. Even the simplest of positions caused her pain and discomfort, and as she was much smaller than I was, it was quite a struggle. Our sex life was unimaginative and dull, as there wasn't much we could do without her being in pain. However, she was an enthusiastic partner who wanted it all the time, and so we made the best of the situation. Little did I know the extent of the bad sex I was having until I experienced the pleasure of being with a more flexible partner. It was a shock to the system, and I was in awe of what I had been missing out on. Story 16. At the time, I had thought it was completely normal to have intercourse multiple times a day for hours at a time. Since my ex and I had been each other's first sexual partners, we had no idea that this kind of behavior was anything out of the ordinary. Afterward, she wouldn't be able to walk, and I couldn't even touch my penis without being in pain. But of course, as soon as the pain started to subside, we were back at it. When we eventually broke up and I began to date other people, they were all surprised by my seemingly insatiable sexual appetite. After years of experience in relationships, I now understand that most women don't last that long and often have to call it quits as the intensity of the situation increases. I find myself having to suppress my desires for multiple rounds of sex in order to maintain a healthy relationship.